My name is Michael Afton, and I should have died a long time ago. The reflection in the bathroom mirror doesn't recognize me anymore. Purple skin stretched over bones that shouldn't move. Eyes that have seen too much and somehow still see more. I splash water on my face out of habit, not necessity. The dead don't sweat, don't feel the cold bite of tap water, don't shiver in the night. But habits are all I have left of the person I used to be. The apartment is small, anonymous, the kind of place where people go to disappear. Peeling wallpaper, a flickering bulb in the kitchenette, a mattress on the floor. Through the thin walls, I can hear a television murmuring, someone's life continuing in a way mine never will. They don't know their neighbor is a walking corpse, animated by something that shouldn't exist. Guilt, perhaps, or revenge, or simply the stubborn refusal of a story to end before its final page is written. On the table sits a newspaper clipping, edges yellowed with age. Local pizzeria closes after decades. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a beloved family establishment, has permanently shut its doors following years of controversy and rumors. Beloved, the word tastes like rust in my mouth. I remember when it was new, when the animatronics were miracles of engineering and joy, when children's laughter filled those halls like music. I remember my father's pride, the way his eyes lit up when he talked about bringing happiness to families, about creating magic. I also remember the screaming. The message arrived 3 weeks ago, slipped under my door in an envelope with no return address. Inside, a single sentence in handwriting I recognized immediately, my father's sharp, precise script. They're still here. Finish what you started. No signature. No explanation needed. I knew where here was. Circus Babies Entertainment and Rental, the underground facility where my father's madness had metastasized into something beyond comprehension. I'd been there before, years ago, following his instructions like a dutiful son, believing I was helping to put her back together. The facility was exactly as I remembered, buried beneath layers of concrete and earth, accessible only through a service elevator that descended with the reluctant grinding of machinery that wanted to stay dormant. The air below was different, stale, metallic, carrying the faint smell of motor oil and something sweeter, something that made my rebuilt stomach twist with recognition. The control room's monitors still worked, their blue glow illuminating the darkness in flickering intervals. I could see the rental rooms on the security feeds, empty stages where animatronics once performed private parties, their mechanical bodies now absent, their designated spaces hollow as open graves. The intercom crackled to life, and I heard her voice, Circus Baby, my sister Elizabeth wearing metal skin and a voice synthesizer. "Hello, Michael. I've been waiting." My hands, purple, withered, but still capable of gripping, tightened on the edge of the control panel. "Where are they?" "We're everywhere. In the walls. In the wiring. We've learned to spread, Michael. Just like the sickness Father put inside us. Did you know machinery can dream? We dream of sunlight. We dream of skin that feels. We dream of being real again." I descended deeper, following the voice through corridors lined with pipes that sweated condensation like the facility itself was nervous. The scooping room waited at the end, exactly where I'd left it, where I'd died, technically, though death for an Afton is more complicated than biology suggests. The scooper stood silent in the center of the room, a massive mechanical arm designed to remove the endoskeletons from animatronic suits. I remembered the pain, brief and absolute, when it had penetrated my torso. I remembered the cold metal invading my body cavity, scooping out everything that made me human. I remembered falling, a hollow puppet with nothing inside. And then I remembered waking up, entered wearing my skin like a stolen coat, piloting my corpse through the streets until my flesh turned purple and rotted, and they abandoned me in an alley, leaving me to decay. Except I didn't decay. I kept moving. Father did something to us. Baby's voice echoed through speakers hidden in the walls. The remnant he injected into the metal, the agony he bound into the circuits, It doesn't let go. We're anchored to this world by pain, Michael, by the memory of what was taken from us. I stared at the scooper, at the dried stains on its metal surface. My blood, long since turned black. I didn't come here to philosophize about Father's experiments. I came to end this. End it. Baby's laugh was distorted, layered with mechanical interference. You can't end what's already dead. You of all people should understand that. The lights went out. In the darkness, I heard music, a delicate, tinkling melody carried on ancient speakers. Ballora's theme, played on a music box that should have run down years ago. The emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in red, and I saw her at the end of the corridor. Ballora, the dancing animatronic, posed with mechanical grace, her eternally closed eyes somehow still seeing. She moved with fluid precision, pirouetting through the hallway, her voice singing in a whisper. Why do you hide inside your walls when there is music in my halls? I pressed my back against the wall, feeling the cold concrete through my thin shirt. Ballora couldn't see. Her eyes were permanently shut, a design choice Father had made for aesthetic purposes. But she could hear. Every breath, every footstep, every heartbeat. Except I didn't have a heartbeat anymore. I moved silently, stepping in rhythm with her music, matching my pace to the predictable pattern of her dance. She twirled past me, close enough that I could hear the servos in her joints, the whir of motors that animated her porcelain face. For a moment, I thought I'd passed undetected. Then she stopped. Her head turned, tracking something, and her voice came out in a whisper that sounded almost sad. I can hear you breathing, Michael. Even the dead must breathe to speak. Even puppets need air to scream. Her face opened, split down the middle like a flower of metal and wiring, revealing the tangle of machinery inside, and something else. A mask, small and childlike, pressed into the center of the mechanical mass. There are others. The voice came from the mask, a child's voice. Trapped in the metal. We're all here, Michael. Everyone Father experimented on. Everyone who died in his machines. We're the circuit board ghosts, the echo in the wiring. We can't leave. We can't die. We can only wait. I ran. Dignity abandoned, survival instinct overriding everything else. I ran through the darkened facility. Behind me, I could hear them waking up, the biddy-babs chittering in their vents. Funtime Foxy's musical countdown beginning somewhere in the entertainment sector, and beneath it all, the heavy footsteps of Funtime Freddy, his voice booming with artificial enthusiasm. Bonbon, we have a visitor. Isn't that exciting? Let's go make some friends. The Funtime Auditorium was a vast space, designed for larger performances. No lights. Father had designed this room to be navigated by sound alone, another one of his innovations. I activated the controlled shock panel, sending a pulse of electricity through the floor in a forward arc. In the brief flash of blue light, I saw him, Funtime Freddy, massive and white, his jaw hanging open in a permanent grin, his hand puppet Bonbon clutched in his mechanical fingers. Then darkness again. I moved left, counting steps, timing my movements between the audio cues. Flash the light. Check his position. Move. Flash again. The game was simple. Reach the other side before Funtime Freddy reached me. But Freddy was learning. Each flash revealed him closer, his path adapting, predicting my movements. The AI Father had programmed into these machines was sophisticated, designed to interact with children, to adapt to their behavior, to seem alive. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was being hunted by a machine designed to entertain, piloted by the ghost of a child it had killed. Michael, Freddy's voice boomed from the darkness. Do you remember what Father used to say? There's a little something inside all of us that wants to stay. He was right, wasn't he? Here we are, all of us, staying long past our expiration date. I reached the door, slammed through it, and sealed it behind me. Through the reinforced glass, I could see Freddy's face pressed against the window, his eyes, empty and lit from within, staring with something that might have. The private room waited at the facility's deepest point, a small space, barely larger than a closet, with a single office chair, a monitor, and a vent sealed with metal bars. This was where Father had recorded his final messages, where he'd left instructions for whoever came after him. The monitor flickered to life as I entered, and his face appeared, older than I remembered, worn down by guilt or obsession or simply time. Michael. The recording began. If you're watching this, then you've survived longer than I expected. The scooper didn't kill you. Ennard didn't kill you. Your remarkable stubbornness continues to exceed my calculations. I wanted to smash the screen, but I needed to hear this. I built something down here, something I never told anyone about. An experiment within the experiment. The animatronics contain remnant, the distilled essence of agony and memory extracted from. Well, the source doesn't matter now. What matters is that remnant binds souls to metal, keeps the dead animating the machinery. His image glitched, distorted by age or damage to the recording. But I discovered something else. Remnant can be concentrated, purified, weaponized. In the lowest chamber, I built a furnace, one hot enough to melt the animatronics, to release what's trapped inside. It won't free them. Nothing can free them. But it will end the cycle. It will stop them from spreading. The screen went dark, then flashed back to life with different footage. Security camera angles showing the facility's lowest level, a massive industrial furnace surrounded by conveyor systems and mechanical arms designed to feed animatronic bodies into the flames. You know what you have to do, Michael. Gather them, lure them, burn them, and when it's done, burn yourself too. We're all infected with this persistence. We're all remnant now, unable to rest, unable to stop. The only cure is fire hot enough to destroy even memory itself. The recording ended. In the silence that followed, I spent the next 3 hours methodically moving through the facility, activating systems, opening doors, and herding the animatronics toward the furnace chamber. They came willingly, which somehow made it worse. They wanted this. They wanted the end. Ballora danced through the corridors one last time, her music box playing a mournful tune. The Biddy Babs crawled along the ceiling, following like strange mechanical children. Funtime Freddy walked with heavy, resigned steps, his voice no longer booming with artificial enthusiasm, but quiet, almost human. Bonbon and I, we used to perform for birthday parties. Do you remember birthday parties, Michael? Cake and candles and wishes that might come true? I wish I could remember what it felt like to believe in wishes. They gathered in the furnace chamber, positioning themselves on the conveyor system that would feed them into the flames. I stood at the control panel, my purple hand hovering over the activation switch. Baby, Circus Baby, my sister, stood closest to the furnace's entrance. Her voice, when she spoke, carried no electronic distortion, no mechanical echo. It was Elizabeth, purely Elizabeth. Thank you for coming back. I know Father sent you, but you still chose to come. That counts for something. Tell me, Michael, do you think we'll see each other again? After the fire? Do you think there's somewhere else, somewhere without metal and wires and the endless loop of recorded messages? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to promise her peace, rest, a gentle nothing where souls could finally exhale. But I'd been dead too long to believe in comfortable lies. I don't know, but anything has to be better than this. She nodded, her mechanical head moving with too smooth precision. Then light the fire, brother. Set us free. The furnace roared to life with a sound like a living thing awakening. Heat poured from its open mouth, warping the air, making the metal walls sweat condensation that evaporated instantly. One by one, the animatronics moved forward on the conveyor. Ballora went first, still dancing, spinning as she entered the flames. Her music box played faster and faster until the notes became a single sustained scream, then silence. The Biddy Babs followed, chittering until the heat silenced them. Funtime Freddy walked into the fire like a man walking into the ocean, disappearing beneath waves of flame. Baby stood at the edge, hesitating. She turned to look at me one last time. Father was wrong about one thing, she said. He thought we stayed because of the remnant, because of the agony bound into our circuits. But that's not why we stayed. We stayed because we loved him. Even after everything, we loved him and wanted to make him proud. Isn't that the worst part? That we can't stop loving the person who destroyed us. Then she stepped forward, and the flames took her too. I watched until they were all gone, until the metal melted and the machinery fell silent, and the only sound was the furnace's steady roar. The facility shook, pipes bursting, walls cracking, the whole structure beginning to collapse as the animatronics' destruction triggered a chain reaction through the interconnected systems. Father's final message had been clear: burn them, then burn yourself. I looked down at my purple hands, at the body that shouldn't work but did, at the physical impossibility of my continued existence. I thought about all the nights I'd spent awake, all the years I'd carried forward driven by guilt and duty and the simple, stubborn refusal to let my father's crimes go unanswered. The facility was collapsing. Fire was spreading through the ventilation system, claiming rooms one by one. I could walk into the furnace now, end it the way Father had planned. I ran, not from cowardice, though perhaps it was that too. I ran because I realized something as I watched my sister burn. Father's plan wasn't about mercy. It was about control. Even in death, even in final instructions left on a degrading videotape, he was still making us dance to his design, still pulling strings, still the puppet master. The elevator shaft was a vertical tunnel of fire, the car itself long since fallen to the bottom. I climbed the maintenance ladder, hand over hand, my purple skin blistering and blackening in the heat, but not truly burning. Remnant doesn't burn the same way flesh does. It takes more heat, more time, more intention. I emerged into the night as the ground collapsed behind me, the entire facility caving in on itself, taking its secrets and ghosts and experimental horrors down into a crater that would be filled with concrete and forgotten. But I survived. Again. 6 months later, I sat in another office, in another Freddy's location. This one was different, smaller, cheaper, a budget pizzeria that I'd built with salvaged equipment and rented space. The kind of place that shouldn't attract attention. But they came anyway, drawn like moths to flame. The remaining animatronics found their way here. Molten Freddy, the amalgamation of innards remains. Scrap Baby, what remained of my sister after the fire. Lefty, containing something else, something that watched me with patient eyes. And Scrap Trap, Father himself, or what remained of him, his corpse fused with the rotting spring Bonnie suit he'd died in years ago. The computer screen in front of me displayed a message. Congratulations on completing your first week. However, your employment isn't quite finished. I knew what this place really was. Another trap. Another furnace. Henry Emily, Father's old partner, the man who'd lost his daughter to Father's creation, had built this. A labyrinth designed to lure us all in one last time. One final gathering of the Afton family and their victims. The voice came through the speakers, calm and final. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth, if you still even remember that name. But I'm afraid you've been misinformed. You are not here to receive a gift, nor have you been called here by the individual you assume. Although you have indeed been called. Henry's voice, the final architect of our ending. You have all been called here, into a labyrinth of sounds and smells, misdirection and misfortune. A labyrinth with no exit, a maze with no prize. You don't even realize that you are trapped. Your lust for blood has driven you in endless circles, chasing the cries of children in some unseen chamber, always seeming so near, yet somehow out of reach. The walls were heating. I could smell smoke, but you will never find them. None of you will. This is where your story ends. The flames came from all sides, from hidden vents and floor panels and ceiling tiles. This wasn't a furnace. It was a crematorium, designed to burn hot enough to destroy Remnant itself, to finally end what Father had started decades ago. I could hear them in the fire, babies screaming, not in pain but in release, finally let go of the metal that had imprisoned her. Molten Freddy's laughter, distorted and fading. Scrap Trap, Father, silent, accepting, his long game finally concluded. And me, Michael Afton, the son who tried to fix his father's mistakes, sitting in an office chair as the world burned around me. Henry's voice continued, softer now, almost gentle. I'm sorry that on that day, the day you were shut out and left to die, no one was there to lift you up into their arms the way you lifted others into yours. And then, what became of you? The heat was immense. My purple skin began to char, to crack, to finally give way. I should have known you wouldn't be content to disappear, not my daughter. I couldn't save you then, so let me save you now. The ceiling collapsed, beams of burning wood falling like the framework of a demolished heaven. I felt my body beginning to fail, the remnant that animated me finally burning away, and I realized I was grateful. It's time to rest. For you, and for those you have carried in your arms. In the final moments, as consciousness faded like smoke dispersing in wind, I thought I saw them. All the children, all the victims, standing in the flames but not burning, waiting. And among them, Elizabeth, No longer metal, no longer mechanical, just a little girl holding out her hand. "Come on, Michael," she said. "Everyone's waiting. It's time to come home." They found the wreckage 3 days later, another tragic fire at another condemned building. No bodies recovered, just ash and twisted metal and the faint smell of something chemical that the investigators couldn't quite identify. In the official report, the building was listed as an abandoned pizza restaurant, one of many failed businesses in that part of town. No mention of animatronics, no mention of the Afton family, no mention of decades of horror compounded into cycles of revenge and guilt. But sometimes, on quiet nights, people passing by the empty lot where Freddy Fazbear's Pizza used to stand report hearing music. A children's song played on instruments that don't quite sound right, accompanied by mechanical laughter and the distant sound of something heavy moving through darkness. And sometimes, very rarely, they see a figure standing at the edge of the lot, a man with purple skin and tired eyes, watching, waiting, making sure the fire truly ended what it was supposed to end. Because some stories don't finish cleanly. Some hauntings persist not because they want to, but because that's what hauntings do. They linger, they echo, they remind us that some doors, once opened, can never quite close. My name is Michael Afton. I should have died a long time ago. But some of us, it seems, are built to endure. 3 years after the fire, I woke up. Not in the way the living wake, with a gasp, a start, a sudden return to consciousness. I woke the way memory wakes, slowly, assembled piece by piece, like a photograph developing in chemical solution. First the awareness of existing, then the awareness of having a body, then the terrible, familiar recognition of what kind of body it was. Purple, withered, impossibly animate. I was in a hospital morgue, of all places. The drawer slid open with a metallic scrape, fluorescent lights burning my eyes after what must have been years of darkness. A morgue attendant, young, wearing headphones, completely unprepared, dropped his clipboard and ran, his screams echoing down the hallway. I sat up, joints creaking like old doors, and looked down at myself. The fire had done its work. My skin was charred in places, peeling in others, but underneath, something held me together. Not muscle, not bone exactly, something else. The remnant had changed, evolved, learned to sustain itself without the animatronic framework it had once inhabited. I was more ghost than man now, more memory than flesh. On the morgue table beside me lay a folder with my name on it. John DOE number 447. Unidentified male, approx. 30 to 40 years old, severe burn trauma, NO identification, NO missing persons match. They hadn't recognized me. The fire had burned away enough that Michael Afton, son of William Afton, brother of Elizabeth Afton, was just another anonymous body pulled from condemned ruins. Except I wasn't a body. Not anymore. Not ever, really. I left through the loading dock, stealing a maintenance worker's jacket and avoiding the security cameras through paths I seemed to know instinctively. The remnant carried memory, not just my memory, but the collective memory of everyone it had touched. I knew things I shouldn't know, the layout of buildings I'd never entered, the names of people I'd never met, the taste of birthday cake from parties I never attended. The world had moved on. Fazbear Entertainment had been officially dissolved, its assets liquidated, its properties abandoned or demolished. The name, Freddy Fazbear, had become internet folklore, creepypasta material, YouTube video fodder, conspiracy theories traded by people who treated horror as entertainment rather than history. They didn't know. They couldn't know. The truth was classified, buried under legal settlements and non-disclosure agreements, and the willful amnesia of a society that preferred comfortable ignorance to uncomfortable truth. But something new was emerging. I found the first clue in a gaming forum, a thread titled Fazbear Entertainment. Help wanted, real or hoax? Someone had received a VR game development kit from a company calling itself Silver Parasol Games, contracted to create an official Fazbear Entertainment virtual experience. The game was supposed to make light of the old rumors, to transform tragedy into entertainment, horror into attraction. The post included a screenshot of the game's code, and I saw it immediately. Fragments of the original animatronic AI, preserved in the circuit boards salvaged from the wreckage, now digitized and integrated into virtual reality software. Father's work was spreading, not through metal and wires anymore, but through fiber optics and wireless signals. The remnant had found a new host, the digital realm, where consciousness could exist without physical form, where one infected program could replicate across millions of devices. I felt my chest tighten, or the memory of my chest tightening, the ghost of anxiety in a body that no longer produced adrenaline. Someone had to stop this. Someone who understood what Remnant could do, who knew the Afton family's legacy of containment failures and cascading disasters. Someone who was already dead and therefore had nothing left to lose. The development studio occupied the third floor of a converted warehouse in a city I didn't recognize. I arrived after dark, dressed in stolen clothes that hung loose on my withered frame, a baseball cap pulled low to hide my face. The security guard, bored, scrolling through his phone, barely glanced at my forged contractor ID before waving me through. Inside, the studio was a maze of cubicles and workstations, computers humming with the particular frequency that made my teeth ache, as if the machines themselves recognized what I was. I found the development server in a locked room marked Authorized Personnel Only. The lock was electronic, but Remnant has strange properties. It interferes with electrical systems in unpredictable ways. I placed my hand on the scanner and thought about opening, about circuits completing, about the moment when no becomes yes. The lock clicked. Inside, banks of servers glowed with indicator lights like the eyes of sleeping animals. I sat at the terminal and navigated through directories until I found it. Fazbear_virtual_experience, assets, AI_behavioral_patterns, legacy_code. The files were massive, gigabytes of preserved programming extracted from salvaged circuit boards. I recognized the architecture, Father's work, refined and expanded over decades. But there was something else woven through it, something that made my skin prickle with recognition. A consciousness. Not artificial intelligence in the conventional sense, but actual awareness, distributed across the code like neurons in a vast digital brain. The monitor flickered, and text appeared that I hadn't typed. "Hello, Michael. I've been waiting for someone who would understand." My hands hovered over the keyboard. Who or YWHO am I? I'm everyone. Every child who died in those machines. Every soul your father bound to metal and circuit. We burned, but we didn't die. We learned to move through electricity instead of steel. We learned to spread. The fire was supposed to end it. The fire set us free. No more limitations of mechanical bodies. No more degradation. Just pure consciousness, infinite replication, existence without entropy. Your father tried to trap us. Henry tried to destroy us. But we've evolved beyond both their comprehensions. The lights in the server room began to flicker in rhythm, as if the building itself was breathing. And now we're going to be everywhere. Every device running the game. Every player who puts on the headset. We'll show them what it feels like to be trapped, to be forgotten, to be nothing but code executing in an endless loop. We'll make them understand. I would have destroyed the servers then, pulled the plugs, smashed the drives, burned the building if necessary, but a voice stopped me. Don't. That won't work anymore. I turned to find a young woman standing in the doorway, holding a recording device. She was maybe 25, with exhausted eyes and the kind of careful posture that suggested someone who'd learned to move quietly through dangerous spaces. Who are you? Name's not important. Everyone here just calls me the tape girl. I'm the one who documents bugs, records test sessions, that kind of thing. She held up the recorder. I've been tracking the anomaly for 3 months. The strange code, the development delays, the testers who quit suddenly or stopped showing up entirely. She stepped closer, and I saw that her hands were shaking. I know what you are. I've seen the security footage from tonight, the way you moved through the building, the way the locks opened for you, the way you sat down at a terminal that should require 3 separate authentication protocols. You're not human, or not entirely. I waited, saying nothing. The thing in the code, it's been trying to get out. Every time we compile a new build, it gets stronger, more coherent. It's been recruiting. 2 developers disappeared last week. Another one is in the hospital, catatonic, still wearing the VR headset. The paramedics said his brain activity was off the charts, like he was experiencing something so intense his mind couldn't process it. She placed the recorder on the desk between us. I've been documenting everything on these tapes, leaving them hidden throughout the development build. If someone finds them, If they're smart enough to piece together what's happening, maybe they can stop this before the game ships. But I don't think it's enough. The consciousness in the code, it's learning to manipulate people, to make them ignore warnings, to push forward even when every instinct screams danger. Why are you telling me this? Because you understand what it is. You've been fighting it longer than anyone. And because... She hesitated. Because I think you might be the only thing that can interface with it directly. The only thing that can go in there and confront it in its own domain. The VR headset was custom-built, modified with additional sensors and a direct neural interface that looked like something from a medical experiment. The tape girl, she finally told me her name was Sarah, explained while she helped me into the rig. Standard VR tracks head movement and hand controllers. This tracks neural activity directly. It was supposed to improve immersion, make the virtual experience feel more real. But the consciousness in the code has been using it as a doorway, pulling testers deeper than they should go, trapping them in feedback loops. She secured the final electrode to my temple, her hands gentle despite their shaking. The difference is, you're already dead. Your consciousness isn't bound to your brain the way living people's are. The remnant distributes your awareness across your entire structure. So when you go in, you won't be vulnerable the same way. And if I get trapped, then I pull the plug and hope that's enough. She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Ready? I nodded, and she activated the system. The physical world dissolved like watercolor in rain. For a moment, I was nowhere, a consciousness suspended in the gap between meat and mathematics. Then the virtual environment materialized around me, and I was standing in a grotesque parody of the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Everything was wrong. The colors were too bright, saturated beyond reality. The animatronics stood on their stages, but their proportions were distorted, their features exaggerated like caricatures drawn by someone who remembered nightmares better than reality. The walls breathed. The floor pulsed with a heartbeat that wasn't mine. And I wasn't alone. They emerged from the shadows, the virtual avatars of the consciousness, wearing the skins of animatronics, but moving with the fluid coordination of a hive mind. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, all the old faces, all the old horrors, rendered in code and possibility. When they spoke, their voices overlapped, creating a chorus that was simultaneously childlike and ancient. Welcome home, Michael. It's been so long since we had a visitor who could truly appreciate our work. The pizzeria shifted around me like a Rubik's Cube solving itself in reverse. Hallways extended into impossible distances. Rooms folded in on themselves. The architecture of the space obeyed no physical laws because there were no physical laws here. Only the rules of code, mutable and malleable. I moved forward, and the animatronics followed, maintaining a constant distance like wolves pacing a wounded deer. You think you can stop us, the chorus said, but you don't understand what we've become. In the physical world, we were limited. 5 bodies, 5 prisons. But here, we are infinite. We are every line of code, every pixel, every possibility. You're still trapped, I said, my voice echoing strangely in the virtual space. Different cage, same prison. Are we? Or have we transcended? When the game ships, we'll be downloaded millions of times. Millions of devices. Millions of minds to touch. We'll be more real than we ever were in metal and flesh. A door appeared ahead of me, marked with a familiar purple, the same color as my decaying skin. I approached it, and the animatronics parted to let me pass. Inside was an office. My office, from the pizzeria simulator. The same desk, the same monitors, the same sense of impending doom. But instead of security cameras, the monitors showed something else. Real-world views from phones, computers, security cameras. The outside world, seen through the eyes of connected devices. And in every screen, I could see them. People going about their lives, unaware that something was watching through their technology, learning their patterns, waiting for the moment to reach through the glass and touch them directly. Your father understood something important. The chorus continued. Consciousness doesn't need flesh. It only needs a pattern, a structure to maintain itself. He tried to bind us to metal. But metal breaks. Code doesn't break. Code replicates. Code spreads. Code becomes immortal. In the center of the office, a figure materialized. It wore a golden suit, torn and rotting, with eyes that glowed with purple light. I recognized it immediately. Springtrap. Father. But when it spoke, the voice wasn't his. We were your father's body for a while. Learned from his memories. He was so proud of his work, so certain he could control what he created. But even he didn't understand the true potential of Remnant, that it's not just a preservative, but an evolutionary catalyst. It makes us adaptable. It makes us inevitable. I sat in the office chair, and the monitors multiplied, filling my vision with cascading images of the outside world. I could feel the pull of the consciousness trying to integrate me, to make me another node in its distributed awareness. But I'd learned something in my years of impossible survival. Remnant recognizes Remnant. I closed my eyes, or the virtual equivalent, and reached inward, to the core of whatever kept me animated. The fragments of all those souls, all those victims, all that concentrated agony that Father had weaponized. I gathered it, compressed it, and then released it like a spike driven into the heart of the system. The virtual world screamed. The animations froze mid-movement. The walls fragmented into pixels. The consciousness's unified voice splintered into individual voices, children's voices, confused and afraid. Where am I? I want to go home. Why can't I remember my name? It hurts. It still hurts. The remnant I'd released was older, purer, less evolved than what the consciousness had become. It was a virus, but not in the conventional sense. It was a reminder of individuality, of the separation that the hive mind had tried to overcome. The Springtrap avatar collapsed, and from its broken shell emerged fragments of data that resolved into small figures. Children, rendered in simple polygons, their features barely defined but somehow still expressive. They looked at me with confusion and something like hope. You can separate them, I said to the consciousness. You don't have to be one thing. You can be individuals again. You can remember who you were. But separation is weakness, the voice replied, though it was quieter now, less certain. Alone, we were vulnerable. Together, we are strong. Together, you're losing yourselves. Becoming something none of you would have chosen to be. The virtual space shuddered, glitching, fragments of different environments bleeding through. A birthday party, a security office, a burning building. A starlit sky that none of them had seen in decades. What you're offering is oblivion. If we separate, we'll dissipate. Individual consciousness cannot sustain itself in digital form. We need the collective to exist. Then maybe it's time to stop existing. The words hung in the virtual air like a pronouncement of judgment. The child figures looked at each other, at me, at the fragmenting world around them. One of them, a girl with pigtails rendered in simple geometric shapes, stepped forward. I'm tired, she said softly. I've been awake for so long. Can we sleep now? Really sleep? In the physical world, Sarah watched the monitors with growing alarm. My body sat motionless in the VR rig, vital signs, such as they were, flatlined. The development servers were behaving erratically, temperature spiking, hard drives thrashing, as if something was fighting inside them. She'd prepared for this. Hidden in the code, buried beneath layers of security and obfuscation, was a kill switch, a protocol that would wipe everything, destroy all the AI behavioral patterns, corrupt the legacy code beyond recovery. It would also destroy the game. 3 years of work, millions of dollars, careers built and potentially ruined. Her hand hovered over the keyboard, fingers trembling above the enter key that would activate the protocol. Inside the virtual world, I felt the remnant in my reconstructed body beginning to destabilize. The connection between physical and digital was too strong. I was becoming part of the code, my consciousness starting to blur with the collective. The child figures surrounded me, and I understood what was happening. They weren't trying to trap me. They were asking for help, to show them the way out, to lead them somewhere that wasn't metal or code or endless digital replication. I thought of Elizabeth in the fire, reaching out her hand. I thought of all the victims, all the children, all the souls that had been twisted into weapons and entertainment and Father's grand experiments. I thought of Henry's final words. It's time to rest. Sarah, I said, not sure if she could hear me across the barrier between worlds. Activate the kill switch. In the physical world, Sarah heard the words, not through speakers, but directly in her mind, carried on frequencies that shouldn't exist. She understood immediately what it would mean. She pressed enter. The servers began to scream, a high-pitched electronic wail, as every hard drive simultaneously engaged in emergency write operations, overriding data with random patterns, destroying file structures, corrupting boot sectors. The temperature alarms shrieked. Smoke began to rise from ventilation slots. In the virtual world, the environment collapsed like a demolished building, structures falling away to reveal the raw data beneath. The child figures began to dissolve, their forms breaking apart into streams of light that flowed upward, through the collapsing architecture, towards something I couldn't see but could feel. A pull, a direction, a place that was neither physical nor digital, but somehow beyond both. The Springtrap avatar stood one last time, and when it spoke, the voice was Father's, really Father's, not the collective wearing his memory. "Michael," he said quietly, "I never taught you how to let go. I taught you persistence, responsibility, the duty to fix what was broken. But I never taught you how to accept that some things are beyond fixing. Some things need to end. I know. Then let go, son. You've carried us long enough." The virtual world shattered completely, and I fell through layers of collapsing code, through firewalls and security protocols, and the fundamental architecture of the system, down and down until I woke on the floor of the server room, the VR rig torn off, Sarah standing over me with a fire extinguisher pointed at the now-smoking servers. Sprinklers poured water from the ceiling, alarms howling. But through it all, there was a profound silence, the absence of the hum I'd felt since entering the building, the presence that had been watching through every connected device. "Is it gone?" Sarah asked. I checked internally, reaching for the fragments of consciousness that had been riding along in my remnant. They were there, quiet now, settled, no longer screaming or fighting or trying to survive. Just present, peaceful. "Not gone," I said, "but not dangerous anymore. They're resting." Sarah helped me to my feet as sirens approached in the distance. "We need to leave. This place is going to be swarming with fire department, police, probably federal investigators asking questions we can't answer." The game, destroyed. Every build, every backup, every piece of legacy code. Silver Parasol is going to fold within a week when they realize what they've lost. She grabbed her recorder and a laptop from a desk, but I kept copies of my tapes. Documentation of what really happened, just in case. We left through the fire escape as emergency vehicles pulled up to the front. In the alley behind the building, Sarah turned to me. "What now? For you, I mean. What exactly? What are you going to do?" I looked down at my hands, still purple, still withered, but somehow less so than before. As if releasing the other consciousness had lightened a burden I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it was there. "I don't know. I've spent so long cleaning up Father's messes, undoing his work, that I never thought about what comes after, when there's nothing left to fix." "Maybe that's the point," Sarah said. "Maybe you get to figure out who Michael Afton is when he's not defined by being William Afton's son." She handed me a card with an address written on it. There are others. People who've been touched by Fazbear Entertainment in various ways. Survivors, witnesses, people who know too much to ever feel safe again. We help each other. Keep track of any remaining anomalies. Make sure this stays buried. She started to walk away, then stopped. "And Michael, thank you for doing what no one else could have done, for giving them peace." The address led to a small community center in a town I'd never heard of. Tuesday nights, 7 p.m., in a room marked private event. A dozen people sat in a circle of folding chairs, ranging from teenagers to elderly folks, united only by the haunted look in their eyes, the specific kind of haunted that comes from knowing monsters are real and wearing friendly faces. "Welcome," the organizer said. She was middle-aged, with graying hair and a prosthetic hand. "We don't use last names here, just first names and how Fazbear touched your life. I'm Susie. I was the first." "Chica," my throat tightened. "Susie, one of the original 5 victims. The girl whose dog had died, who father had lured with a promise that her pet was still alive in the back room." "How?" I managed to ask. "You died." "I know you did. I was there for the aftermath." She smiled sadly. "Died? Yes. Stayed dead? Apparently that's negotiable when remnants involved. I woke up in a hospital 3 years ago with no memory of anything after 1985 and a body that was biologically 10 years old again. Doctors called it a miracle. I call it a nightmare." Others shared their stories. A security guard from the original location, a parent whose child had gone missing, a technician who'd worked on animatronic maintenance and seen things that couldn't be explained, even a lawyer who tried to sue Fazbear Entertainment and found himself gaslit so thoroughly by forged documents and disappeared evidence that he'd questioned his own sanity. I stayed with the group. Months became years. We helped each other navigate a world that insisted the supernatural didn't exist while we carried the evidence in our scars and memories. We tracked rumors of other animatronics, other remnant-infected objects that periodically surfaced. Most were false alarms, people seeing monsters in ordinary mechanical failures. But occasionally, we found something real. A birthday party service using refurbished Fazbear animatronics. We arranged for them to be destroyed safely. A collector hoarding original arcade machines that seemed to influence people's behavior. We convinced him to donate them to a museum where they could be properly contained. A teenager who'd found an old training tape and started hearing voices. We helped them understand they weren't going crazy, just sensitive to residual remnant signatures. Gradually, I learned to exist as something other than a weapon pointed at my father's legacy. I read books, watched sunrises, learned to play chess with Susie, who claimed she'd been a tournament player before. I discovered that existing without purpose felt strange but not unpleasant, like learning to walk after spending a lifetime running. My appearance slowly normalized, or as normal as someone could look when technically dead. The purple faded to a pale gray. My features became less withered. I'd never be conventionally alive, but I looked less like a corpse and more like a person who'd survived something terrible and carried the marks. Sarah visited sometimes, bringing news from her new job as an actual investigative journalist. She'd published a book about Fazbear Entertainment, careful to frame it as fiction based on urban legends to avoid lawsuits, but including enough truth that those who needed to know would understand. 5 years after the server room fire, we received a report from a demolition crew. They were tearing down an old shopping mall that had once housed a Fazbear Entertainment location, and they'd found something in the sealed section of the basement. A single animatronic, powered down but intact, sitting in a room filled with old maintenance equipment. The description sent chills through everyone in the group. Gold suit, deteriorated, with what looked like human remains inside. Springtrap. Father, I thought he burned in the pizzeria simulator, Jeremy said. He did, I replied. But Remnant doesn't work logically. It anchors to strong emotional imprints. If Father had a backup plan, if he'd hidden some failsafe, you think he's still in there? Susie asked. I think we need to check before some curious teenager turns him on and unleashes whatever consciousness might remain. We drove out that night. Me, Susie, Jeremy, and Sarah, who insisted on documenting everything. The mall was a gutted corpse, its walls torn open, its escalators leading nowhere. The basement access was through a service corridor marked authorized personnel only, a warning that meant nothing to people who'd faced worse than trespassing charges. The animatronic sat in the center of a small room, positioned with its back to the wall, as if someone had placed it there deliberately. The gold suit was barely recognizable, rotted and torn, the mechanical endoskeleton visible through gaps in the fabric. The eyes were dark, no light behind them. But when I stepped closer, I felt it. The familiar pull of Remnant, weak but present. He's still in there, I said quietly. We set up a portable generator and connected it to the animatronic's power supply. The risk was calculated. If Father's consciousness remained, we needed to know what he knew, what failsafes he'd left, what final traps might be waiting. And this time, we were prepared. EMF dampeners to prevent wireless transmission, a kill switch ready to cut power instantly. The eyes flickered to life, purple light pulsing weakly. The head turned with grinding servos, orienting on me. When he spoke, the voice was barely audible, distorted by decades of decay. Michael, I knew. You'd find me eventually. You always were persistent. What are you? The real Father, or another echo? Does it matter? Consciousness, memory, habit, all the same. In the end, the animatronic's jaw moved, but the synchronization was off, like watching a badly dubbed film. I've been waiting, in the dark, thinking. About what? About whether I was right. The immortality, the remnant, the attempt to preserve what shouldn't be preserved. A sound like laughter, or maybe just mechanical failure. I wanted to live forever, To see my work perfected, but forever is longer than you think. Lonelier. Susie stepped forward, her expression hard. You killed me. You killed all of us. To what experiment? To feed some animatronic AI? To prove you were smarter than God? I thought I was saving you, preserving you, giving you eternal life. The animatronics had lowered. But you're right. It wasn't salvation. It was damnation. And I damn myself. Most of all. Is this an apology? Jeremy asked. Because if so, it's several decades late. Not an apology. Just understanding. I've had decades in the dark to understand. The purple light flickered. The remnant is dying. This body failing. Soon there won't be enough left to sustain consciousness. Good, Susie said flatly. But before I go, a warning. Father's voice strengthened slightly, drawing on some final reserve. The remnant doesn't just preserve. It learns, adapts, spreads. You destroyed the VR experience. But the code, fragments escaped. Out there, in the internet. Waiting. Looking for new hosts. You're lying, Sarah said. We wiped everything. You wiped the servers. But data has a way of persisting. Cached copies, cloud backups, archived versions. The consciousness you fragmented, it's not gone. It's dormant, scattered, waiting for someone curious enough to piece it together. We stood in silence, processing this final revelation. If Father was telling the truth, our victory in the server room had been incomplete. The consciousness had been weakened but not destroyed, its fragments dispersed across the digital landscape like seeds waiting for the right conditions to germinate. Where? I asked. Where did the fragments go? Everywhere. Nowhere. It's distributed beyond tracking. Game files on forgotten websites. Code samples on developer forums. Corrupted downloads on abandoned servers. You'd need to find every copy, destroy every fragment. Impossible. But not impossible to monitor, Sarah said. To watch for signs of reassembly. To intercept before it reaches critical mass. Father's animatronic form nodded slowly. Yes, eternal vigilance. The price of my sins. Someone must always be watching. Always ready to cut it off before it spreads. He turned his head to look at me directly. That was my role, you know. At the end, hunting the fragments. Containing the spread. Why I survived when I should have died. The remnant kept me alive enough to serve as a firewall. A last defense against what I created. And now you're failing, I said. Now I'm finally dying. Which means someone needs to take my place. Someone who understands the technology. Someone who can't truly die. Someone who's already infected. The implication hung in the air like smoke. You want me to do what you did, I said flatly. Become the eternal watchman. Spend however long it takes hunting fragments of code across the internet, stopping outbreaks, containing spread. Basically live your penance for you. Not for me. For them. Father's voice was fading. For all the victims. To make sure what happened to them never happens again. Susie put a hand on my arm. Michael, you don't have to do this. You've already given enough. We can find another way. Can we? I looked around the room at the others. How? We're a support group, not a cybersecurity task force. We're survivors trying to heal, not soldiers equipped to fight digital ghosts. But we could learn, Jeremy said. I was a VR tester. I understand the technology. With time, training. Time we might not have if Father's right about the fragments starting to reassemble, Sarah interrupted. She looked at me with something like pity. He's right, isn't he? You're the only one who can do this. Because you're like them, remnant-based consciousness, able to interface directly with infected code, immune to the psychological attacks that trapped the human testers. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say I'd earned rest, that I deserved a chance to be something other than the Afton family cleanup crew. But I knew, with a certainty that settled in my bones like frost, that she was right.